Hey everyone. I am just going to post my response to our discussion about language and race, which actually uh, is very interesting to me as an English teacher, an IB English teacher. One of the things we study in IB English is language and social relations, and certainly language and race comes up in that. I think most of these terms I was pretty aware of. I hadn't ever heard the term horizontal racism. I certainly knew what it was, but I hadn't heard that term used. Uh, so that's a good new piece of knowledge for me to have. The rest I sort of, had talked about. Institutional racism, structural racism, obviously, are things that we've studied in my classes, and the kids are quite fascinated by that. And certainly, one thing I have learned as for teaching these issues is that having the terminology and the words to talk about things is essential. So I found this to be actually extremely helpful. In terms of how exploring the level of racism might inform my leadership at my school. As I move forward into thinking about how to bring a diversity and equity program to my institution, I think one really important level of racism that we will need to address is internalized racism. Obviously, as a majority white faculty, we have very few people of color. And we actually have a very diverse student population, so they don't mirror each other. So I think that internalized racism is something that most people aren't even aware of unless they've done some of this work. And this idea that by being more aware of your internal bias or your implicit bias, and microaggressions and things like that, that you can start to reflect on how that might impact how you interact with the world. So as I've thought about going forward with this, that's certainly a level that I think is important to address, because my thought has been that my faculty will be quite defensive when sort of approached with this idea that they need to be more culturally sensitive and more based in equity, because many of them consider themselves very sort of liberal, progressive, people who certainly aren't racist in their minds. So, like, stepping back and understanding that some of these things are implicit, and sometimes you're not even aware of them, I think will be really important for the learning of my community. Certainly at a bigger scale, as a private independent boarding school, we have structural and institutional things we have to deal with as well. Uh, you know, independent boarding schools weren't made for diversity and originally. So we're still adapting to that. How does privilege show up in my life? Oh, so many ways. When we're talking about privilege in my class, I always mention the story of the time I got pulled over because I had gotten in an accident. I had sideswiped a car by mistake, my fault totally. And we both pulled into the parking lot, and uh, when the police got there, they found out my registration was expired because the DMV had been sending all my things to Chicago. So I had just caused an accident and I had an expired registration. And the white cop actually waited for his female partner to leave and then just let me go and drive home without even a ticket, which I think, to me, that was a great representation of the privilege I hold as a white middle class woman. That was how I was treated. There was certainly no danger, no confrontation, and he actually let me do something that's illegal in driving home. So, that's, I think, a pretty stark example, but I think, to me, that really was a time where my privilege really sort of like hit me in the face, and I couldn't deny it. Since then, I've tried to become more aware of the little ways, certainly that it surrounds my life, and to sort of just be more aware of that. I'm not sure how to fix it. Obviously, it's a bigger issue, but I am trying to be more aware of it. Um, Othering. Yeah, this is something I think about a lot, and I also share this story with my kids. I grew up in a majority white area, middle class, educated parents, so I didn't have much experience with discrimination or othering or anything like that. Um, but when I was 19, I got pregnant, and I looked about 16, had my daughter, constantly mistaken for her babysitter and things like that. But for a period of time, as a single parent, I was on welfare and food stamps. And going to the supermarket and handing over my welfare card and having the people behind me see that and just feeling them judge me and just assume that I was just some young, uneducated, girl that got pregnant.